Matt.
Right now, we've got
Matt
the chairman
Schlapp,
of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp, who agrees with Mika, so I guess we're going to be hearing from him a lot. And also senior editor and correspondent at hotair.com, Ed Morrissey, he's the author of the book, Going Red. 2 million voters who will elect the next president, how conservatives can win them. Also from Washington, columnist of the Washington Examiner, Kristen Soltis-Anderson. She's here with latest polling from the Republican National Committee project that looks into which party cares more about a variety of issues. We'll get that into a moment. But first, I want to start with you, Ed, because, you know, Mika and I predicted that Trump could win and probably would win the Republican nomination a long time ago. I'm now saying that I think it's going to be really hard for him to win the general election because of the way he's acting on the campaign stage. But you wrote the book about the persuadable voters that will elect the next president. From what you've written, does Donald Trump have a foothold there, or are you with me that what he's doing is probably pushing away some of them?
I think that there's some elements of that could be very attractive, which is sort of this nihilistic, I'm tired, the red-blue divide. You know, this is about Joe voter out there, and I think some of that is going to be attractive. However, I think what you're looking at here is somebody who's incentivizing the voters that he's already gotten more than he is reaching the voters that are still out there that are persuadable. And far, at least, because I'm out of the Donald Trump prediction business. I've been out of that business for months now. But at least so far, there's no evidence that we're seeing the needles move in those directions.
Okay, so are you out of the Donald Trump prediction business, Matt?
Yeah, I think I always have been.
Oh, so you don't know whether yesterday hurt him or not?
Well, I think yesterday will not hurt him. I think what happened yesterday is look, this is what I always say. He does in front of the camera what most of us do behind the camera.
Right.
What candidates say behind the camera. Look at the disdain Hillary Clinton has for the press. Oh, I had to do 300, press interviews, as if that's like a punishment. It's a democracy. You're supposed to do that. That's part of this. And what Donald Trump does in front of the camera is he belittled the press, which a lot of conservatives love doing at cocktail parties all over this town. So, I mean, certainly in Washington, D.C. So I think that actually what happened yesterday is another one of those moments where he connects to a lot of people who are they're disdainful of politics. Now, Joe, I agree. You can't run this show like this every day between now and November, or else I do think that is going to result in a loss. But I do think there are these moments when he captures people by the fact that he's very candid.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all.
You were saying persuadable voters. What issues would these persuadable voters be lured by?
Well, it's different in each of these communities, Mike. Some of these communities, the issue is economy, some of it's education. Hamilton County, Ohio, for instance, you've had a mass exodus of people out of Cincinnati and out of the county. It was the one county that had that kind of mass exodus of the 7 that I looked at. So they're restructuring the economy. Government infrastructure is important there. Education is especially important. And so the idea is you have to actually know each of these communities and contextualize your message for each of these communities. But what I think the commonality of this is that people wanted a pragmatic candidate. They didn't want an ideological candidate. And to an extent, what you're seeing with Donald Trump is perhaps that type of message coming from his campaign, which is, I'm the guy who can get things done. I'm the guy who can cut the deals. I'm the guy who can make things happen on the ground. And I think if he sticks with that, he's going to be pretty competitive.
Okay, so Kristen, you've got some brand new polling of young people, age 18 to 29. What did you find?
We wanted to ask them some questions about what they think about how the economy works, how much they like to take risks before we dove into anything about politics. And what we found is that 49% of young people think that if you get ahead in America nowadays, it's mostly because of luck rather than hard work, while only 45% say that it's because of hard work. And this breaks down along party lines. Young Republicans think, sure, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can get ahead. But the rest of the millennial generation thinks that promise has been broken somewhat. And so we really wanted to figure out what if young people then think it would take to fix the economy. Young people are looking for candidates that have empathy, that care about breaking down barriers, that don't just have happy talk that says, well, we're all equal, and if you only work hard enough, you can get ahead, but that acknowledges there are real systemic barriers to success in America, and then talks about why conservative values can be the best way to get over some of those barriers.
Boy, yeah, that's depressing for somebody who teaches my kids around the clock. I've always said, hard work erases a multitude of sins. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the most gifted. But if you work the hardest, you level the playing field. It looks like a lot of people don't believe that right now.
A lot of people don't believe that. And if you take a look at the economy over the last 20 years, I mean, I think that there's some evidence that this is not a non-reality based conclusion for these millennials. They've seen, pretty much all they've seen, the millennial generation has been the run-up to the Great Recession, and a stagnant recovery afterwards. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the late 70s, early 1980s when I was out of high school, and it really did look bleak, and you had to wonder, can you succeed in America? The question is how do you channel that if you're Hillary Clinton or if you're Donald Trump? And I think that empathy issue that you saw in that poll is going to be a big problem for Donald Trump.
Kristen, you also looked at which party cares more about these things to young people.
We did. So the college Republicans also wanted to know, what do people think Republicans care about? And the findings at first were pretty alarming for the GOP, that even on issues like who cares most about the national debt and keeping America secure, Republicans only had slight advantages or were still at a disadvantage. But on things like growing the economy and creating more equality, Republicans were at a big disadvantage. The good news is that there were some messages that we tested. For instance, do you think that Washington should focus more on protecting consumers, or do you think Washington should focus more on opening up the economy and creating the conditions for bottom-up growth? And bottom-up growth wins by a 2-to-1 margin. So there are things that I think conservatives can talk about if we begin by acknowledging that there are systemic barriers and problems that need addressing and that we care about them. I think that's a huge opportunity for Republicans if they choose to take it.
But Matt, I was just looking at those charts as we were flashing them across on health care, on education, on all these other issues. The Democrats just absolutely pound Republicans in these polls.
Yeah, you know, you think about presidential politics and you think about themes. A fair deal, a square deal.
Here's another one, women's issues. 16% for Republicans and, 78% for Democrats? I mean, Republicans are getting pounded here. And this is a poll that Kristen helped do for the college Republicans.
But a part of this whole Trump phenomenon and really the Bernie Sanders phenomenon is the fact that the way these parties have run things and the issues they have stood behind, there's really great upheaval out there. There's a whole realignment, I think, going on within these parties. I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of presidential cycles if things look very different than they do today. And I think for the GOP, and certainly for its leaders, they have to say, why did they lose their own people? And why is our message not working?
Could the Republican Party be breaking up?
Anything's possible. I think that what we saw in the primaries is that you had a party that wasn't really listening to its voters, and I think that's always a dangerous point for a party. It's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. And then, unless that changes, then yeah, I mean, eventually voters are going to decamp for something else for people who are listening to them. Absolutely.
All right, Kristen Soltis Anderson, thank you very much, Matt.
That's great.
Schlapp, Ed Morrissey. Thank